So, welcome everyone. Before we get started with anything, we want to give you a quick interpretation rundown. So I'm going to pass it along to Senzantle.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pablo, and I'm here with my co-interpreter Jackie. We'll provide English-Spanish interpretation for today's call on behalf of Sensontle, a language justice cop from Asheville, North Carolina. And I'll provide instructions in both languages so that people can get into the right interpretation channel and listen to the call in their language of preference. Buenos días a todos, mi nombre es Pablo, estoy aquí con mi cointérprete Jackie en nombre de una cooperativa de justicia del lenguaje de Asheville, Carolina del Norte, llamada Sensontle, y vamos a ofrecer interpretación inglés-español el día de hoy. Vamos a dar instrucciones en ambos idiomas para que puedan entrar en su canal de preferencia. So please, if you are joining this call via a computer, just look for the interpretation icon. It's like a globe, and then click on English. You should find that in the bottom of your screen. But if you're using a smartphone, find the three dots in the bottom right corner of your screen, click on language interpretation, then English, and finally on done so that it's actually active. Por favor, si se están uniendo a esta llamada desde una computadora, busquen en la parte inferior de la pantalla el icono del globo que dice interpretación, hagan clic en español y con eso van a poder escuchar la llamada en este idioma. Ahora, si se conectan desde un teléfono inteligente, busquen los tres puntitos que dicen más, interpretación de idiomas, español, y luego clic en finalizado. And as we all create this bilingual space together, just a few friendly reminders. Please do keep a slow or rather moderate pace when you speak, especially when reading off the screen. Speak up and turn off your microphone if you're not participating at any time. And let us know if you have any issues with interpretation, please. You can write to us via the Zoom chat. Por favor, estamos creando este espacio multilingüe entre todos, entonces recuerden hablar a un ritmo moderado, hablar fuerte y claro y apagar su micrófono si no están participando. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Hey, Max, I think you might be talking to us, but we can't hear you at this time, just so you know.
Yes, thank you. I was sharing my screen. But before we get started, I wanted to say thank you all for joining us today. And thank you for Senzantle for being able to broadcast this in Spanish and English to the entire community. My name is Max Tainter. I work for a department called Strategy and Innovation with Buncombe County. And with me is my colleague, Kathleen. Kathleen and I are here to talk about the strategic plan, the 2030 strategic plan. So before we get started with the presentation, we want to say thank you. So earlier this year in May, Kathleen and myself and our colleague Brad went all over Buncombe County with CAPE's help, our communications and public engagement department, getting your input associated with what you think is important in Buncombe County to prioritize county budget dollars, policies, where our Board of Commissioners should prioritize what they want to do in the next 5 years for our community. We had 21 input sessions. We had over 400 participants involved, and we had over 1,100 suggestions, and that is awesome. I know that Buncombe County does a lot of work trying to get information from our community to make sure that what we do reflects what the community wants. So thank you for whenever you participate or give information or feedback or input to Buncombe County, because we're doing this for you, for everyone in the county, so we don't want to do it without you. With that said, what are we doing here today? If we got input associated with the community, then today is all about feedback. So the strategic plan, every 5 years, the Board of Commissioners, our elected officials commit to a 5-year plan for what I said earlier, budgetary, policy, programmatic decisions. And when we asked for input in May, we asked for input associated with 6 areas: education, economic development, growth and development, community health, public safety, and energy and environment. So if it looks familiar and you gave input during those sessions, we organized your input into those categories. And what did we do with that information? Well, I'll tell you. So we had an entire process where we created those focus levels, those 6 categories. We got input from the community, and we worked with our employees internally, department directors working in departments relative to those focus areas, and we came up with what our priorities should be based on what we do, based on what our community wants. And we created a large report that we gave to our Board of Commissioners. Our Board of Commissioners took all of that input and created goals. And the goals are what we're going to go over today with you. So we got your input originally. Now we have the goals created. Now we want your feedback. So when we get your feedback, we're going to have you look at these goals and go to public input, the site that you probably registered for this discussion on. And you'll notice that there's a survey there, but don't go there yet, because we want to make sure that before you go there, we have all of your questions answered about what we're looking at with our goals. And we're going to take all of the survey responses from the community feedback, which is what we're doing now, and present that to our Board of Commissioners. And then at that point, they can adjust the goals, or they can just try to incorporate more community information, or just as a reminder of what the community wants and what they kind of think of the goals that the commissioners created. And then we can adopt the plan after that. So we want to make sure you're involved in multiple steps of this process. So again, thank you for being here for both of them. But what did you say during your input? Let's remind you, because we did that back in May, and I don't even remember what happened last week. So let's look and see what we thought back in May. So based on the input that we got, 16% of you had responses relevant to education and the importance of it. Economic development was the same. Growth and development was very high. And growth and development is things like affordable housing, making sure that we have infrastructural support for our growth. 16% was health and public safety. Energy and environment was 11%. And we had another category, that had 15%. But the trending answers were essentially affordable housing, cost of living, transportation and public transit, supporting teachers and students, the idea of what we can use our land for in zoning. Healthcare access was a big one. Support for local businesses, environmental conservation, supporting public safety and law enforcement, and the unhoused is number 9, and then supporting access for underserved communities. Now, with those 1,100 plus responses we got, those were the top 10 sort of themes that we got from it. And our Board of Commissioners based their goals around these sort of trends associated with what the community thought and with what our department focus areas thought, our county employees, what we can do. So the purpose of today's meeting is we're going to go over the actual kind of goals the Board of Commissioners created underneath the 6 categories we had. And Kathleen's going to go through those. And we want to encourage you, the last time we did this, it was more of a facilitated discussion where we wanted to talk back and forth. This time it's more of a presentation where we want to show you the answers and just make sure if you have any clarifying questions about what things mean, that we can address those. So when you do take this survey at the end of this, you will be well informed about what each answer means. And feel free, interrupt through comments. You're welcome to turn your, excuse me, microphone on if you have any questions. And we'll go ahead and get started because we want this to be a Q&A. So I'll bring it to Kathleen, and Kathleen, just tell me when you want the next slide.
All right, thanks, Max. Let's go ahead and get started. So again, as Max shared earlier, we have 6 different focus areas for the work of the strategic plan, each with objectives and goals underneath. And the first area is education. So, and I'm sorry, I just lost my screen. The first area is education. As you can see underneath this, there's kind of 2 buckets of information on this slide. So in bold, you'll see on every single one of our focus areas, we have high-level objectives. These are, you can sort of think of this as the direction the county wants to go. So in the bucket of education, where do we want to be moving? And then the bullet points you see underneath of those bold, large font objectives are goals. Different way to think about those is, how will we know that we are moving in the direction set forth in the objective? So under the category of education, our first objective is to enhance early and adult learning with 3 goals that would, for how we will assess our progress towards that enhancement. The first one is to increase early childhood education opportunities. Then we want to reduce the amount of youth disconnected from education, increase library card holders. So the argument is, if we have hit each of those goals, we will be moving in the direction of enhancing early and adult learning. Hope that sort of objective to goal relationship is making sense, because the next goal in the category of education we want to talk about is to holistically improve equity in education. That would involve 3 goals as well. The first being to reduce youth involvement in the justice system. Second, increase kindergarten readiness with BIPOC populations, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color populations, if anyone's not familiar with that acronym. And then finally, the third goal under holistically improve equity in education is to reduce the high school graduation gap between white and BIPOC populations. So again, as Max said, at this point in the conversation, really, we're hoping to just offer clarity if anybody has questions about what any of the objectives or goals mean. And then at the end, we'll elicit your feedback, your thoughts on, you know, are these appropriate goals? Are these relevant goals? Do these match your priorities? But for the time being, again, I would invite anybody to drop questions in the chat if you're not clear what anything on this slide means, or you are welcome to come off mute and ask questions at this time as well, before we'll move on to our next focus area. Thank you. We have a question in the chat about what does disconnected from education mean? And that is all about the, excuse me, I'm in the, so this is in reference to the federal designation of opportunity youth. So this is something that the federal government actually defines, this term that we're kind of borrowing for our strategic plan here. So this is persons aged 16 to 24 who are neither in school and don't work either full or part-time. So anybody 16 to 24 that's not in school or employed. And we're, again, borrowing that definition from the federal designation of opportunity youth. Thank you for the question, Jennifer. All right, if there's no other questions, let's move on to the next slide, Max. Please. So now we're in our next focus area, which is economic development. Here, once again, you'll see we have 3 objectives with goals underneath each, which would tell us, are we moving in the right direction to achieve that objective? So in the realm of economic development, our first objective is to increase opportunities and support for local workforce. 3 goals would tell us if we're doing that. The first one, increase jobs in our development projects that offer health and other benefits. Second goal, increase employment for those who receive nutrition support services. Third would be to connect more library patrons to employment opportunities. So those are 3 goals that would tell us we are increasing opportunities and support for local workforce. The second objective is to increase access to quality internet. 3 goals under there as well. Increase the number of underserved households with high quality internet. Increase county cell coverage in low service areas. And reduce the socioeconomic digital divide by connecting more residents to technology. And then finally, the third objective under economic development is to increase economic and business opportunities in Buncombe County with 3 goals that would tell us if we are moving in that direction. First, increase average local wages in target industries. Next, we would increase all wages to the local median wage with industries involved in our development projects. And then finally, increase entry-level wages to living wages with industries involved in our development projects. So once again, looking at this theme of economic development, want to invite folks to write in the chat or come off mute if you have any clarifying questions to help better understand what these goals mean, so that you'll be able to offer feedback effectively at the end of our presentation.
Yeah, I have a question about explaining this library connection here of like, I guess in the education one, it also said increase library card holders, connect more library patrons. Like, are there a lot of people, like, where does that evidence come from that people that are library patrons is going to be a solution here? Or like how many people that are needing services are library people? Or could you explain that a bit?
Absolutely. I first want to say I can't claim to have, the data exactly in front of me about exactly who's utilizing the libraries. And Max, I see that you came off mute, so please feel free to speak over me or clarify. But at a high level, I will say my understanding in the background between, if you're speaking specifically about connecting more library patrons to employment opportunities, it's really a reflection of the number of people who access libraries as their primary mean of computer access to do things like look for jobs, write a resume, complete online trainings. So really leveraging that truth and becoming a platform for pathways to employment for folks who are not finding them elsewhere. Max, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just go back to reflect what we first said was the idea of not only are these goals the reflection of what the community wanted, but also like how our county can actively participate within these goals. So our library department is a great resource for a lot of people who can need access to free technology, free access to training, for like applying for jobs, for like adult education opportunities that's free. And you can't get free adult education in many places. And libraries obviously aren't places where people just check out books. It's where they get access to all of these great free services. So not only is it important for our community to get access to these sort of new educational goals they have, but because the county, through our library system, is a wealth of knowledge, of free knowledge and education for the community, the county put it as, you know what, this is something we can commit to. We can connect people to these resources. We can utilize this strong tool that we have to make these goals and like work towards these focus area goals.
Jennifer, thank you for the question. Please, I see you came off mute again. Please.
No, I was just thanking. That's great.
Awesome. And then Karen, I see your question in the chat about whether there's a time limit regarding the length of time patrons can use computers. We don't have library personnel on this call today, so I'm not even gonna guess because I don't want to misspeak. But what we can do is be sure to follow up and connect you with somebody who can give that answer, unless Max already has an answer. He's gonna clarify.
No, everyone who signed up for this meeting gave us your email address, so we can just email you with any answers that we don't know the answers to right now.
So we'll make sure to get you that connection, Karen. Thanks for the question. All right, unless there's any other questions on what these economic development objectives and goals mean, let's go move on to our next focus area, which is growth and development, which again, I know Max kind of touched on this. It can be a little bit confusing with economic development. So the big clarification I'll give is here we want to think about things like affordable housing, expansion, as the community as a whole is evolving, as opposed to that really, economic, the business community focus of the previous slide. So within that focus area of growth and development, we've got two objectives we're looking at right now. The first one is to encourage diversity of housing as a foundation for affordable, healthy, and thriving communities, particularly for the most vulnerable residents. You can see here we've got a few more goals than what we have seen under previous objectives. So we will know that we are achieving that objective described above if we can say that by the year 2030, we have more affordable housing, increase in attached units. And attached units, for anybody who's not familiar, I know I certainly was not before this process, refers to basically anything other than a standalone single family residence. So apartments, townhomes, all the different types of creative structures we see in our community. If it's not a standalone single family residence, that's what we're talking about there. The next goal is to support emergency home repairs for low to middle income households. Moving on to our next goal, support low and income households and increase BIPOC home ownership. So those are our goals under encourage diversity of housing as a foundation for affordable, healthy, and thriving communities, particularly for the most vulnerable residents. I see a question that we have, what constitutes more affordable housing? So I'm going to read to you the definition I have from Max reference, those department heads and work groups of subject matter experts when it comes to affordable housing. So it reads, this goal is to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing that is owned by low and moderate income households earning below 80% of the area median income. So I think that's a really key metric there. When we say what makes it affordable, it's at 80% of the area median income. This initiative aims to ensure ongoing access to safe, affordable living conditions for the financially vulnerable residents where further deterioration of the home without intervention might result in displacement. So Asia, thank you for the question. I hope that was helpful to provide some context. So that's just our first objective. And again, please keep the chat is great for questions. Again, come off mute. But I'm going to move on to our next objective here, still staying in this growth and development theme. Our second objective is to maximize the use of land, guiding development to targeted growth areas that lead to resilient communities. So 4 goals will tell us if we are moving in that direction. The first one, guiding growth in areas with supporting infrastructure. The second one is encourage subdivisions to conserve more land. Third, complete 7 miles of greenways. And fourth, build 500 affordable housing units. So again, those are our 2 objectives with a handful of goals underneath each when it comes to growth and development. Are there any further questions to clarify the meaning of these objectives or goals? All right, moving on to public safety. Here we have 3 objectives around public safety. The first is to increase holistic prevention and harm reduction. There are four goals that will tell us if we are doing that. The first one is to reduce gun-related injury and death. Next, to reduce racial disparities in jail populations, in the jail population. We will increase community member training in risk reduction and preparedness. And finally, the fourth goal that would tell us if we are increasing holistic prevention and harm reduction is to reduce the number of people who violate pre-trial conditions of release from jail. Second objective under public safety is to enhance public safety. We will know that by the year 2030, we have enhanced public safety if we have the first goal being improve emergency response times. Second, increase the number of locations that store emergency resources and supplies for community members to access during a disaster so that they are more evenly spaced across the county. The third goal under this objective is to increase emergency response scenario trainings, specifically the number of those trainings. And then finally, the fourth goal under enhanced public safety is to increase the percentage of child protective services that are cases that are initiated on time. So from the time that a case is first investigated to the initiation of that case, increase the percentage of those that are in line with state standards. So that's just our second objective under public safety. The third and final objective under public safety is to advance collaboration and coordination of individualized diversion services. We have 3 goals under that objective. The first one is to increase the number of trauma-informed emergency response options available for behavioral health-related calls. Second is to reduce recidivism. And third, increase feelings of safety for survivors of domestic and sexual violence. So we have 3 objectives and multiple goals under each, under the category of public safety. Once again, please feel free to come off mute, ask any clarifying questions, or drop those questions in the chat if anybody is unclear on what these goals mean. All right, hearing none, let's move on to community health. So once again, we have 3 objectives in this category. The first objective is to increase coordination and resilience of community health services to create a healthier and safer community. There are 3 goals that will tell us if we are achieving that objective. The first one, connect more health and human services clients to needed service providers. Second, reduce the number of non-emergency responses for calls related to chronic diseases. Third, improve the quality of independent living for elderly residents. The second objective under community health, increase equitable outcomes in physical, mental, and behavioral health and increase social connectedness. We will know that we are doing those things if by the year 2030, we have decreased the infant mortality rates for BIPOC families. Second, reduced the number of suicides through more mental health services. And third, increase resident participation in recreation programs. Then the final objective under the area of community health, improve community well-being by providing person-centered, trauma-informed services. Once again, 3 goals will tell us if we have hit that objective. Those goals are, first, increase trauma support services and community connections for county clients. Second, reduce the racial disparity of white and BIPOC children entering foster care. And third, finally, decrease the number of deaths from substance use. So it's a lot of content on this slide. Please do not hesitate to post any requests for clarification in the chat or come off mute and let us know if you're unclear on anything.
I just have a quick question on just understanding when, like on the last bullet says, reduce racial disparity in foster care, decrease. Is this at some point there'll be a number and then in 5 years we see if that number increased or decreased, like the numbers somewhere else that will be plugged in later, or where do we get to know what that looks like?
Spot on, Jennifer. Exactly. In fact, by the time, so right now you're seeing these draft goals. By the time this plan is finalized, adopted, something that the county is working around, the intention is that each of these will be written as a SMART goal with a specific target that we hope to achieve by the year 2030. So, and these are very hypothetical numbers. So please, these made up numbers here, do not attach any meaning to the actual number you hear. But let's say we would, I'm just going to use the very last bullet point here, decrease the number of deaths from substance use by 15% by the year 2030. So there'd be a very specific goal, and then the text of the plan itself would include that historic data. So honestly, Jennifer, the short answer to your question would have been yes, but I hope that provides a bit of context to where you'll find that information as well.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think it is really relevant to understanding how to interpret this information. And then Karen, I see your question.
I have a response to Karen's question.
All right.
So Karen, once we're going through these goals, we will tell you where you can specifically add specific things that you want added to this through a survey that we're going to ask everyone to take after this, but we're going to definitely share all of your ideas.
So thank you. And in case anybody isn't looking at the chat, Karen had asked about adding something about social determinants of health and some more specific ideas under community health. So we will absolutely make sure everybody knows where to document that feedback before we are done with this call. But to get us there, we have one more area. Thank y'all for your patience. Somehow 6 focus areas feels entirely too broad for everything the county does, and somehow like a lot of information all at once. So this is our last area, environmental and energy focus area. And we have 3 objectives here. So our first objective is to preserve the agricultural heritage of Buncombe County and prioritize the protection of natural resources. 4 goals would let us know that we are doing that. The first is if we can say that by 2030, we did train farmers on land conservation practices and keeping their land as active farmland. Second, reduce the amount of recyclable and organic reusable materials in the landfill. Third, restore linear feet of stream banks to improve water quality and prevent erosion. Fourth, conserve county land for environmental purposes. So that is our first objective in this area. The second objective for environmental and energy is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and protect air quality. With 4 goals underneath this, the first being increase the number of zero emission county vehicles. Second, provide county-wide solarized campaigns to promote new residential participation. Third, compost more organic waste in the county to lengthen the life of the landfill. Fourth, promote renewable energy operations at county facilities. And then our final objective is to increase hazard mitigation and disaster preparedness to support a climate resilient community. The 3 goals that would let us know we are moving in that direction, we are achieving that objective, are first, initiate programs to create climate resilient community based on FEMA recommendations. Second, improve water quality monitoring to provide more flood warnings. And finally, increase reactive and proactive community education for preparedness and safety notifications during disasters. So once again, for our final focus area, please do not hesitate to type up or come off mute and share if you're uncertain of the meaning of any of this information, and we'll do our best to answer those. While folks take a second, the final thing I'll say before I toss this back to Max to kind of conclude and let all of you know how to share your thoughts is a deep appreciation and my apologies to the interpreters, as I realize I consistently forgot to speak slowly during those slides. So thank y'all for your patience. Happy to clarify after the fact if anything was unclear. So thank you all. Maybe lack of patience would be a better way to put it. But with all that said, I'm not seeing any new questions pop up in the chat. So I am going to toss it back to Max to explain our final steps.
Yeah, so the last step is Kathleen and I are going to be going around the community to kind of do this presentation. And at the end of the month, we're going to craft another report based on community feedback. And we're going to present that to the Board of Commissioners in November and hopefully get this plan adopted at the end of November. And then moving forward, you can see the progress every year over the next 5 years on how we're making towards all of these goals. And then in 5 years, we're going to be reaching out and doing the same thing again. And I will probably be a little more gray when that happens. But this is how you can take it. And they're going to be posting the survey in the chat also, but there's an English and Spanish version of this survey. It'll take you to the public input website. And if you scroll down a little bit, once you're on public input, there you will see a list of all of the focus areas, asking like which ones like resonate with you the most. What do you think is missing, or any comments you have associated with the goal? And then at the very bottom, it'll have like out of the goals specifically, which ones are most important to you. So we hope you'll take time to do that today, right after this meeting, while this is all still fresh in your head. But please share it with your neighbors, your friends, your family, people who live in Buncombe County, because we want as many voices as we can in how we prioritize county services. And we got so much great response before, so thank you again for just being here to listen and taking the survey. We really appreciate it. But that's the end of the presentation. Kathleen and I will stay on for a minute or so after if anyone thinks of any questions to have, but otherwise, we would love it if you use this time to go to the website in the chat and take the survey right now. Thank you, Karen. Okay.
Max and Kathleen, I just had one follow-up to that data question or the SMART goals. You kind of outlined that, you know, it would be more drawn out with like showing that we're going for a 15% increase was the example. And so do we up or down it? I'm just wondering, like, is the idea, and I could put this in there somewhere, of like the raw data to know exactly how low and maybe even non-existent some of the numbers might be. Like, there's one thing to say a 15% increase, but if we don't know where that is, we might say, I mean, some of these things I don't even know if there's like, do we have anything? Like, is it a zero? And so, you know what I'm asking? I don't know if
I
that's
do. So you are talking to two county data nerds right now. So what I will say is that we are going to have baseline data to compare our improvements
okay.
associated with everything. So yes, it won't just be
Okay.
represented as percentages.
Okay, great. All right, that's good. All right, I'm going to take the survey. Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jennifer.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I think we can go ahead and close out the meeting, but thanks everyone.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you,
Thank
Kathleen.
you to our Sensontle partners.
And
Kate,
Angelica.
for Angelica, Rocio, and Cape helping
Rocio and
organize
Cape.
all this.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, Jackie wants to see if we can stay on, if we want to stop recording.
Sure. We still have some members of the public here. Is that all right?
I see. No, once everybody